X-Force number 17 reminds us Quentin Quire has died more than perhaps anyone on Krakoa, and he is sick to death of it. This is an all-Quentin issue, and by golly, Ben, Percy, and Joshua Cassara are here to make us care about the Omega level with the anarchist chic fashion sense set firmly in 2002. Today I'll answer, why does Quentin Quire keep dying so much? Whatever happened to Zeno and their Quentin Corpse? What does Krakoa look like from outside the X Nation? And of course, theories and predictions for things to come. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. You're listening to Krakin Krakoa number 157. If you like the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel or Krakin Krakoa, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting here. It all helps me out a great deal. You can find full X-Men reading orders on comicbookherald.com. Spoilers for discussed comics will follow. Writer Benjamin Percy, artist Joshua Cassara, colors by Guru-eFX, letters by Joe Caramagna. As you may remember, Quentin Quire can't stop dying. Percy and Cassara really lean into how frequently, with the montage of deaths, we haven't even seen in X-Force, which is actually a nice way of conveying X-Force has been busy as heck, going on mission after mission that we're not actually seeing in the pages of the comic. Again, it's a good way just to sort of express the passage of time and that the Krakoans have been a wee bit busy. Now, Quentin's trying to turn a new corner as he is happily dating Phoebe of the Stepford Cuckoos, okay? So all these deaths, they need to be replaced by the beautiful, beautiful scent of a hot, hot date coming later. But first, Quentin encounters a massacre on a cruise ship, okay? He goes on a little solo mission by himself, tries to talk himself into not being scared, clearly unsuccessfully. And the moment Quentin was surprised by something sinister that had murdered all of these human passengers on the ship and proclaiming, "But that's impossible," it became fairly clear to me that this was going to finally be our callback to the lingering thread of Quentin's missing body captured by Zeno way back when, okay? Now, if you don't remember that, don't worry, I'll talk about it a little bit, but there's been a lingering mystery. It was teased on the Reign of X promo card, which, gotta say, Marvel's, I did 3 videos on what's coming in the Reign of X right here on Krakin Krakoa. Marvel's been hitting those teased images pretty fast. Like, all that stuff's getting addressed in the Reign of X pretty quickly here in 2021, which good on them for doing so. You know, not teasing stuff that, like, is gonna get sat on for, you know, a year before they get to it. I do appreciate that level of planning. Quentin, of course, was one of those things. Now, Quentin finds that the victims of the cruise ship also appear to be victims of his and X-Force, right? Like, there's the indication that this was a mutant attack, actually, in some parts, led by Quentin himself. I respect that Percy and company didn't play the mystery too hard here, because if you've been reading the series, it seemed fairly clear to me that this was going to be our alt-dark Quentin. The dramatic irony of Quentin knowing nothing about this, though, makes perfect sense, right? Like, he died, he had no memory of being captured. Now, if you feel like you also have no memory of him being captured, that's because it was in flippin' July 2020, I believe, when this happened. I think it was X-Force number 11 or thereabouts, and Quentin, after, I think his first kiss with Phoebe, actually, of the Stepford Cuckoos, he does get killed by one of the invading Russian nesting doll things that invaded Krakoa, and then captured by Mikhail Rasputin with the cerebral. Quentin himself was actually murdered with the cerebral sword, right? So this is when Mikhail got Quentin's body and the cerebral sword, brought him to Zeno. We learned that he was in partnership with that human terrorist organization, and they have themselves a copy of Quentin Quire's body, okay? Before we get to all that, though, resurrected Quentin here, like, he gets resurrected, so yes, like, he does. Even in the issue that is all about, like, Quentin turning a new leaf, you know, not dying so much, it's pretty harsh that even here, like, he's still killed before we hit the credits. Tough breaks for Quentin all around. But Phoebe filling in Quentin's memories of their times together post-resurrection is very sweet. It's actually a very nice moment that we don't get to see too often. I will point out, too, that, like, Quentin comes back yoked and ready to rumble, which is something that gets fleshed out here a little bit. It's a little bit interesting to see, like, oh yeah, Quentin has been resurrected a billion times. I really appreciate Percy and the team recognizing nobody's had the same opportunity to quite manipulate the resurrection results like Quentin Quire, Kid Omega. This is perfect for the character, finally weaves in some of that preposterous arrogance back into the character instead of just using Quentin again like a punching bag, you know? And honestly, it's really interesting to me because nobody on Krakoa has had these same opportunities. Like, who has died anywhere near as much as Quentin is at this point? I don't know that anybody would come close. I think that would actually be kind of a fun data page. Now, as we think about the possibilities of enhancement via resurrection, like, what does it mean that Quentin is requesting and seemingly getting these various cosmetic procedures? You know, it tells us that, like, you know, all those questions that were asked by Cyclops and Nightcrawler in X-Men number 7, and the questions fans have been asking over and over, and we know are going to be coming down the road with Sinister's chimeras and Moira talking about that. Like, mutants can be changed. Their power levels can be altered. Sometimes, like we saw with, I think, Sync, prior to him going into the vault, it was like, yeah, he came back and his power levels are more efficient after resurrection. Changes are happening to mutant kind. In the case of Quentin, it's stuff like, I want a new hair color, or I want 20/20 vision, so the glasses are just an accessory, or very specifically, also a billion% Quentin asked for the precise dimensions of his genitals. Dude got an increase or decrease, we don't know. And if I have to spend more time thinking about it, well, so do you all. Let me know in the comments what specifically happened here. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Let me know your thoughts on the comment, or do you, right? Percy and Cassara, they do impressive work on Quentin and Phoebe's date, adding layers to Quentin Quire, increasing the empathy I feel towards him. And as this era of X-Men comics has done so successfully, turning characters with limited range into something more. The idea that Quentin is, like kind of stuck emotionally and holding himself back works psychologically, I think, and it helps to at least try to explain why an Omega level mutant on this roster could so frequently be the team's resident shark bait. You know, I think this is a thing that has bothered a fair amount of readers because it's like, Quentin Quire is supposed to be pretty powerful. Why is he getting taken down over and over again? The answer, at least in part here, seems to be like, yeah, there's some mental blocks. Like, Quentin's holding back a little, okay? In an effort to really capture the all-new, all-improved Quentin, Phoebe calls in Jumbo Carnation to fashion the heck out of our boy stuck in the pages of Gillen and McKelvey's phonogram for the last 20 years. Mostly this sets the stage for Cassara playing with some Quentin design work. Shouts to option number 1, looking a lot like Batman's new Clown Hunter, and to the potential of an all-glob look, you know, usurping Dr. Manhattan as the most full frontal thing we've ever seen in comics. But it's a fun display, again, of potential costumes. That's kind of always a motif and a kind of a trope that I'm going to be into as a fan. Now, as all this is going on and Quentin settles on his new look, Jumbo Carnation lets out a cry, and we find officially that he has been controlled and that, lo and behold, Zeno is pulling the strings, okay? So every indication here, even though we don't literally see it on the page, is that Zeno's making use of their Quentin clone to control, various mutants, or just people or entities or who knows what, with Quentin's vast Omega level psychic powers, okay? So they seem to be using this clone, much like they did way back in X-Force number 1 when Zeno captured Domino and then used Domino's genetics to, alter their own ability and their own luck and their ability to access Krakoa. They're now using this Quentin clone to control various individuals and wreak, kind of a disinformation and a campaign of it, making it look like mutants are aggressive and trying to kill humans, okay? And in this instance, just trying to get Jumbo Carnation to seemingly kill the original Quentin Quire and his girlfriend, Phoebe of the Stepford Cuckoos. It's interesting to consider, too, how Zeno's plot fits into the big picture as a terror plot to destabilize and discredit Krakoa. I'd say one of the most interesting angles that X-Force dealt with, pretty early and has kind of fallen away from is how humanity perceives Krakoa, okay? Beast's logbook of terror campaigns, which ironically is what I called the D&D DM notebook I didn't actually keep in high school, highlights the disinformation and propaganda being spread to make Krakoa appear to be an enemy of humankind. And the plots are all very predictable and often theorized by X-fans, such as questioning what's actually in those Krakoan flowers, right? That's a big one. Or attributing tragedies to mutant psychic control. I do have to question, though, Beast's conclusions, which is an evergreen statement right there, particularly that disinformation is Krakoa's greatest enemy. I'm not going to say it straight up doesn't matter, but perception of Krakoan mutants as a threat that they, do not actually have any intention of becoming is a time-honored tradition among human bigots in the Marvel Universe. Why would perception be Krakoa's main concern, Like, when Professor X says the Children of the Vault are our greatest threat, or Nimrod shows up, I buy it, right? Those threats are massive to mutant kind. But bad social media PR is a security concern, I think, in terms of the violence that can foment. But I kind of question that it's the number one thing preventing, Krakoan safety. That actually sounds like kind of the old dream of Professor X of convincing a vast majority of humankind that they should love one another, which, as Professor X has conceded in this era, was like the wrong dream. Again, I like the idea. I like the idea of that dream. It's just not the era of pragmatism that we're really in here in the Krakoa era of X-Men. Now, Beast having a conclusion, again, that is questionable and potentially wrong, is exactly what Beast should be doing. I do want to give shouts, though, to we've been hard on Beast, right? And there's been a lot of good reason to be hard on Beast because he's like going full Dark Beast and he's doing lots of terrible things in this era of X-Force. But again, there is that thing of like, it does make sense to have someone tracking these things. It does make sense for Krakoan security to be stronger and actually monitoring this stuff. I think a big part of the problem with X-Force and with sort of what I view of Krakoan's security right now is just that, like, so much of this falls on Beast's shoulders. Like, he's controlling so much of this unilaterally, and I think that is probably the majority of the problem, is just that, like, there aren't enough voices actually, in the room to, like, curb his worst impulses. So I think, we're all about to be reminded that Quentin Quire is not an enemy Krakoa really wants to have. And that's coming likely in X-Force number 18. The Krakoan for the next issue reads Nightmare Visions, which, the cover is any indication, is going to be Quentin unleashing some of his powers, likely psychic nightmares, for the X-Force crew, who, again, we don't really see the majority of the crew in this book. I think it'll be interesting to see like what Zeno's plans are, what they're up to dig more into that. X-Force continues to satisfy, I think, in a lot of ways. The fact that, again, it's like, it was a while ago that Quentin got captured. It was July 2020. It's been a weird, year plotting wise, right? It's been a weird, past year, just in general. But like, I'm interested to see like if there's more to this, I think is a big thing, right? Like, if it's a one-off kind of like, oh, we got Quentin and we did one weird little thing that disturbed X-Force, like that's one thing. But if they've got kind of an army of Quentins now, or this really opens up, like what is Zeno's actual game, right? We haven't really seen much more of Mikhail Rasputin. Like I kind of want to know his connections and what they're planning. A little more inside information on this X-Force foe, I think, could go a long way in terms of making this book really, really stand out. So thanks everybody for listening. I'm Dave. You can support the site via patreon.com/comicbookherald. You can find a link here in the show notes. That is super, super appreciated. You can find my writing at comicbookherald.com, at Comic Book Herald on social. Look for the best comics ever in My Marvelous Year podcast for more from me. Thanks everybody for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.